guys. How you doing? Welcome to the after show. It's a Narativ live on a Friday night. You know what that song is? That's one of my favorite songs. First time I went to LA.
That's Sheryl Crow, man.
She's the best. First time I went to LA, I got in my car. I was staying at a Motel 6. Can you believe a Motel 6? Because I was like 18, just I was fresh out of South Africa, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to LA and live my dream. I get in the car, and as I turn onto Santa Monica Boulevard, this song plays. And then there's a famous line in here down the line, which goes, we'll get there in a second.
I know the line.
So I was like, damn, that is the nice, exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And I was like living it for that 5 minutes. And I had a good time. Turns out LA can be a fun place.
It's magical. That magic happens. Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second, because I can't hear you if I play the music so loudly, in my ear at least. How you guys doing? It's LB and Greg Oliar that are here tonight. How are you, as you are always on a Friday night? LB, how's your night or day?
It's okay. I let you guys know. I let everybody know there's. I cannot believe the winds right now. You actually might even hear them shaking the house.
Oh wow!
So, and it's very dry. We haven't had any rain, and I smell smoke out there. So if I have to run, I will run away in the middle of the broadcast. I think it'll be okay.
That'll be very worrying, but hopefully
dramatic.
You won't have to do that. And dramatic, but
it'll be fine.
It's quite a cliffhanger, so it's a good tease. Yes. I'm not going to lie about that. Okay. What's your favorite song from when you were like in high school or whatever, just out of high school?
Oh my God, you're going to put me on the spot.
I just did, yeah.
Disclose my age. Well, I was really into Led Zeppelin. So.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Really?
Take a stand, LB.
And the Grateful Dead.
Controversial.
Taking a stand.
Wow. I didn't pin you as one of those. As you were like, what did they call them? Deadheads? Are that's what they called them?
I was a deadhead.
You were?
Yeah, I was a deadhead. Yes. There was a lot of capital marketing opportunities around being a deadhead, and I capitalized on them all.
Okay.
We'll just say it that way. And then I had to pay for my education, everybody. And then what else?
Wow, there are so many questions that I want to ask you, but now I'm scared.
Okay.
But I'm so scared to ask.
It's all right. It's just like this was we got to be really wild when I was sort of at the end. I feel like people got real conservative and weird after my era of being a teenager and being in high school. That whole sort of young republicanism was coming in, and preppy-ness. And I was like just before that. So, my generation, we were just like really wild. We were out there. It was fun.
It does sound like fun. I wish I was there.
Any song I could go and hear live outside.
Wouldn't it be great to just be able to transport ourselves back to that moment? Like that moment when you were like, just for a few minutes, like be in that car in Santa Monica Boulevard where I had like no problems in the world. I was just like the happiest camper, even though I was staying at the Motel 6 or whatever it was. I was like, this is the nicest time of my life. I'd like that. Where would you go back to, Greg Oliar? What's your favorite moment?
I'm not into the time travel.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. I like where I am right now. When you said that, I was like, oh my God, no. That's like the plot of many, many bad movies where we have to go back and repeat ourselves over and over again.
Just for like a few minutes, not like the whole year.
Good movies, actually. But no, that's not. It's not my thing. I don't think. I don't know. Can I talk about something about the weather? Because this weird thing happened that just occurred to me talking about weather. I was driving on this back road in this town called Highland, which is on kind of right off the Hudson River a little bit. So sometimes there's weird weather there. And I swear to God, there was a tornado, but it was only on this one piece of property that I was driving by. Like you could see the wind, and the lid of the dumpster flew up in the air, and the cars were rattling, and the guy came out of the building, and literally nothing else was affected by it at all. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. It looked like something out of WandaVision. I was like, is there an X-Men here?
Is this right now? It's today?
It's like 2 days ago.
Oh, so you've had crazy winds, and you're having crazy winds.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Wonder who we can blame for that.
It's the way
Maybe we
it
can
is
blame
now.
Russia
I
for
don't
that or
know.
something.
I'm sure we can.
We can find a way. We should probably get into some news. So I have no idea what to begin. Though I like talking about your podcast because, Greg, it's again been a blockbuster good podcast. People need to check out Prevail from today. You talked a lot about Ukraine, and it was so interesting. I just fill everyone in about who you had on, and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, thank you for listening and for the kind words. So my guest today was a guy named Victor Rudd, who's an attorney. He's American. He's Ukrainian American. He's been the chair of the Ukrainian American Bar Association and various other groups that specialize in foreign policy. And he's basically a Ukraine expert. And he spent most of his life banging his head against a wall because no one in government seems to understand the history of Ukraine and the fact that the Russians, not just Putin and Stalin, but going back to the time of the Romanovs, have made a concerted effort to erase and appropriate the history of Ukraine for their own purposes. It's really the first Russian disinformation campaign involved Ukraine, right? So I was exposed to his work. He was reading my stuff, and he sent articles to read. And this one that's about Russia's war on Ukraine, and it goes back through Ukrainian history, which I didn't know very much about. And studying Russian history in college, I learned that the first Russian, quote unquote, civilization sprung up around in the Middle Ages around Kiev, right? Called the Kievan Rus, which is Rus apostrophe.
Yeah.
And that then all of Russia kind of sprung out of that. That was the first place that there was a civilized place, right? So in Russian history, they teach you that is part of Russia, but it's not part of Russia because it's in Kiev. That's right. Ukraine. So
they like that confusion in the Russians. They like to confuse us with it. They use it to their benefit a lot.
That's what they do. So as Victor points out in his piece and on my podcast, this is something at the time. Russia, the word Russia did not exist in the Middle Ages. Russia did not exist. There was Moscow, and the land around Moscow was called Muscovy, and that's what everybody called it in medieval Europe. And at that time, Ukraine was sort of one of the centers of learning and culture and literacy and basically liberal politics. They, women were it was a very egalitarian culture with men and women being relatively equal, which was unheard of elsewhere. So all this kind of cool stuff. And
there was a Prussia, though, right? There was a king of Prussia at the time, I think.
Yeah, but Prussia is in Germany.
It's Germany, right? Yeah.
Wonder how that happened. Away.
Yeah.
And okay. Prussia didn't exist yet. This is 400 years before that. Okay. Yeah. This is like 980, like 1000, going into, and then into the post-Byzantine period. Constantinople fell in the Fourth Crusade in 1204, and that's when a lot of the intelligentsia, I think, moved to Kiev. Anyway, eventually this all broke down because the Mongols came, the horde of the Mongol horde, and conquered everything and basically sacked Kiev, destroyed the city, all this kind of stuff. And then the Russians kind of came in and their civilization sprang up. But Moscow and Kiev aren't really that close to each other. And historically, Ukraine and Russia are they're just two different places. So when Ivan the Terrible became Tsar, he was the Grand Prince of Moscow. He was the first Tsar, which is in 1570, 1580, something like that.
So there was no Tsar before that? He was the first one?
No Tsar before him. He was the first Tsar.
He
and he's the first person to call himself Russia. He's the Tsar of Russia. Okay. And he took the word because it comes from Kievan Rus, hoping to conflate the two things and basically appropriate it. So when you see Ukraine called Little Russia, that would be like Great Britain calling itself Little America, as Victor has pointed out. Right? It just chronologically, it makes no sense.
Did he decide to call himself the Terrible, or was there somebody else who said he was the Terrible?
No, Terrible more like, oh my God, I'm freaked out by this guy. Ivan the Terrible invented the State Secret Police Services.
Oh.
That's what he did. Yeah. Put that in your, LB.
Well, they're very good at that. I got to say, they're still very good at that.
Terrible. This is what happened to him. He got hit on the head or something. He went a little insane, and he left Moscow. He went on a retreat to this monastery where he slowly lost his mind. And they were like, you have to come back. You have to come back. You're the Tsar. You got to come back. And he was like, no. And then finally he said, I'll come back, but you got to do this, this, and this. And then when he came back, he was just kind of like, it was like Luke Skywalker when he's in the in the Jedi outfit, except evil. So he came back and he was kind of evil, and he would have these guys who would ride black horses dressed all in black, riding around the countryside, terrorizing everybody, which is what Tolkien bases the ring wraiths on in the Hobbit book. Ivan the Terrible invents all this stuff. Okay.
Oh wow,
but that's
so it's pretty creative. I mean, gets points for creativity.
Very creative. Yeah. Then he dies, and okay, we're gonna go.
We have to take the whole show. I mean, I love the recent history of all of this, because isn't it fascinating that there's all these like crazy people wandering around making history? But let's do something a little bit more recent.
Russia, though, for one more second.
Oh yeah, go for it. Of course, that's what we do here. That's our brand.
Ivan the Terrible dies, and then the son becomes Tsar, and his son's like a nebbish, and he dies. And then there's this like 16-year period known as the Time of Troubles, when they couldn't find a czar, and there were all these famines, and there was economic collapse. And it was during this time that some dude shows up from Poland, and he's like, "Yo, I'm Dmitri. Ivan the Terrible. That's my dad. I'm the czar now." And they were like, "Great, let's you be the czar." And they install this fucking guy as czar. He's not the czar. He's some dude that just walks in and says it.
Oh wow,
that's who we're dealing with here. Okay.
Oh wow.
And once they figured it out, they killed him and they shot him in a cannon back toward Poland. Then it happened again. There was a second false.
Wow.
I didn't know about the cannon. Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's a nice.
Did they really shoot him out of a cannon? Oh, we'll get back to this.
We have to do drunk history.
We gotta do it. We gotta do this
Anyway,
later.
I'm going way far afield, but I can't. I'm losing my connection. Are people even? I can't see the comments. People are
probably like, "What are these guys on tonight?" I mean, I want to talk about the big story that came up on LB's feed this week. I mean, I think it's called the Nordstrom, and it's a.
Oh no!
No. But I don't remember the name of the Nordstrom, so it's a good way to remember it.
Yeah,
it's actually the Nord Stream 2. There you go.
There you go.
And so this is a pipeline. It exists doesn't exist. Actually does. Nord Stream 1 exists between Russia and Germany, and they want to build a second Nord Stream, which, I mean, good for them, because they're allowed to do those kinds of things. Everyone's allowed to do these things. Here's a picture where they want to build it from Viborg to Lubmin. And up until now, America's sort of been opposed to. Sorry?
Those aren't real cities. Come on. You're just
Lubmin?
messing with us now.
No,
I've never heard of either one of these places. Okay.
Well, they're on the coastlines, right? So I mean, it's probably tiny little places, and they're also probably oil refinery towns, because they probably smell bad. So you probably don't want to go there. But other than that, they're very important to the good people of Germany and the good people of Russia, of course, as well. So up until now, America's been opposed to this, because it doesn't really want Russia to grab a hold of all of them of the European gas market, because it's such an important thing that if they suddenly flood Europe with all this gas, then there'll be a problem to be able to influence Russia and stop Russia from doing.
They'll have money.
Because the Russians like to use this. They have this company called Gazprom. They've used it in Ukraine before. They like to use it as like a weapon, Oh, it's cold. You want gas? No, well, you didn't do that nice thing for us we wanted last week, so you get no gas for the next few months. So they give it to you, and then they use it as a weapon, and they take it away, which is the way Russians and mob figures do things. But this week, something really strange happened, and I saw it in your feed, LB. Suddenly, the Biden administration said, "Hey, it's okay. We're taking the sanctions that the Trump administration put on you, and we're taking them away. And you guys go ahead and build a Nord Stream, sorry."
Okay. Nord Stream, yeah. And I didn't put a lot of explanation, guys, because I didn't have time to really delve into it in terms of it's on my feed, and I retweeted it, and it just shocked me. And I still haven't had time to dig deep into it. But I've looked a little bit closer, and I'm still shocked, and I'm still not okay with it. Now, what it looks like is that, in talking with our European our allies, our friends, and trying to rebuild that relationship, this is very important to them, and it's pretty far along, right? So I don't know in terms of blocking it, but that wasn't the point of the sanctions. The sanctions were on specific individuals who are connected to Vladimir Putin, who are part of this, and I'm still very much an advocate. And this was part of your show this morning, Greg, which was so great. Mm-hmm. And to tie these two things together is we heard Rudd say the same thing. And this is the gentleman that was on Greg's show. He's an expert in Ukraine and Ukrainian history and the current situation. And we heard him say echo exactly the same sentiment as Yuri Shvets. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
That could be the
That's
fire.
the cliffhanger.
I'm sorry about that. It should. Nope. Okay, I gotta mute. Don't listen. I don't know who that is calling.
All right. Well, anyhow, while she does that, I can do some.
I'm like, I don't know who's calling. I don't want to broadcast somebody's phone number.
No, of course not. No, you don't want to do that.
Old people phones in this house. Okay, so here's the connection.
Yeah.
The connection is that we've got to cut off the money that makes its way back to Vladimir Putin through these individuals. That doesn't stop the pipeline sanctioning the individuals behind it. As far as I can tell, maybe I'm a moron and I don't know, and I shouldn't be talking about this, but I have no idea why sanctions against individuals, not against the whole thing. It's not even against Gazprom itself. It's about some of the executives that are behind this thing that are getting huge sums of money from it, and they're just funneling it back to Putin.
There were a lot of companies that backed out. Once the sanctions were instituted, American companies that were helping build this thing, they pulled out. So now it's going to be more
complicated. Yeah. It's going to be more complicated. But what did we hear everybody say that knows what they're dealing with and is honest about Russia and China, by the way, but especially the Kremlin, is you have to hold a fist right underneath them.
Right.
They're only ever, this is our enemy. It is. And they're only ever going to keep encroaching and encroaching and encroaching and encroaching until they topple us and do horrible things to us until we actually figure it out, because we're at the seat of democracy, because he's done this. Putin and Xi, these guys are done with democracy. They are.
Yep.
And they're trying to get rid of it. And the way to get up underneath Putin and get up underneath Russia is just to get in there and make sure that they know they have to feel us. We can shut their lights off, you guys. This is also ridiculous that we haven't done anything yet. Unless you guys can inform me, because I have been in a work bubble. Have we done anything about their attack on our own gas line? Have we done anything about any of this?
So this is what I'm wondering. I'm wondering is this something really weird going on? It feels to me like there's maybe a deal that was done and related to Colonial. I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing here, but it's quite possible that Biden landed up talking to Putin and said, "Give us our gas back because you knocked out half of the eastern supply line." And Putin said, "Well, you give us our gas back," and they landed up maybe making some sort of deal, because the timing did seem to be coincidental. It seemed really strange. And the weeks after, we are struck by this terrible attack, the cyber hack that we've never had the likes of from Russia, that we do not respond. And in fact, we not only not respond, we just hand over the Nord Stream back to them. It's pretty.
It gets worse.
It gets worse. This goofy Blinken guy, I'm sorry. He needs to. Something's going on there. I'm sorry, and I'm not saying conspiratorial. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's almost like you have to go in and shake these people now, that we fought so hard to get in there when it comes to the international stuff. I understand the incredible responsibility of getting our domestic stuff in line because of the virus and the pandemic, and getting shots in arms and getting relief to people, and the mess that is happening on Capitol Hill that will just, I don't know, it's just a mess. I get it, guys. But we're in all of that mess because of these people, these enemies that we have that have turned us on ourselves. We don't have a strategy that's been communicated about any of this stuff. If it's happening, we're not supposed to know about it. We're not seeing any evidence of that. We're seeing sanctions get lifted.
I'm seeing a pro-Putin, pro-Bibi Netanyahu White House is what I'm seeing. It's kind of like it's. I mean, there's lots of good reasons around it, and we'll go. But it's what's happened. I mean, Bibi's going to stay in power now because basically Joe's there saying, hey, he's my friend, and he's now popular because of this war he started. So, hey, he gets to stick around, and Putin gets to say, look, America's so weak they won't even hit us. They won't even hit us after we hit them on their gas pipeline. They won't even hit us. They're giving us a free gift on the Nord Stream.
Can we go back to the Ukraine thing with Russia for just a second?
Yes, please do.
Speaking of that, okay, so this is one takeaway that Victor Rudd brings up on the podcast. I think it's super important that people understand.
Yep.
After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine had more nuclear weapons than China, the UK, and France put together. They were number 3. Only the United States and Russia had more nuclear weapons than Ukraine. They were convinced to surrender these weapons by the United States government to Russia,
That's right.
which they did, believing that the United States and the Western countries, the NATO countries, would offer them the same level of security that we give Japan and Germany post 1945. So,
and even Russia participated in that and said, we also agree to this. We won't do
Russia,
anything.
Exactly. They did the same thing. So what happens? That was in 1994, okay? 8 years ago, this fuckhead rolls into Crimea and conquers it.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? Not a goddamn fucking thing.
Nothing.
A couple of sanctions. Good job, Obama. Just fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. How is anybody going to trust us? We told them, give up the nukes, we'll protect you. They rolled in and we did not protect them. Okay? Here are 3 examples of how this goes on. Hitler, okay? First, the Rhine. Occupied the Rhine. We didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. Went into Sudetenland. Munich happened. Peace in our time, Chamberlain says. He invades Czechoslovakia. They're like, okay, you can have that, but no more Poland. He invades Poland. World War II is on because these guys don't fucking stop.
No, they don't even mean to stop.
Saddam Hussein, example number 2. Saddam Hussein, another maniacal, psychopathic thief, rolls into Kuwait because he doesn't want to pay back the debt that he owes Kuwait. The first thing he does when he gets there is rob the goddamn central bank of Kuwait. He's a criminal. Mm-hmm. We come in and we say, this aggression will not stand, man. George H.W. gathers the forces together and kicks his thieving ass back to Baghdad, and that's it. We don't hear from that fucking guy again. So say what you will about war and this and that. That worked. The objective of that war absolutely worked. Okay.
As far as I understand, the peace deal with the so-called peace deal with Bibi is we have to go now. Americans have to go now and rebuild the mess they made in Gaza. That's the deal. That America is going to go foot the bill to rebuild Gaza? I mean, it's fine if we want to do that for strategic reasons and all of that, because we've been so weakened in the Middle East for the last 4 years. Maybe that's the reason. But boy, I mean, this does not look like a victory. The White House is out there saying, "Hey, look at us. We succeeded in getting a ceasefire." You just got us a huge bill to fix something that we didn't even break in the first place. Let them fix their problems.
I have the solution, by the way, to that problem. Yeah. The solution is 51st state. That's it. It's a 51st state. Everybody can vote. No problem.
Which is the 51st
I'm just kidding. Israel, Palestine. Just bring them all in. 51st state.
That's going to work.
Well, yeah. I think...
I don't really mean all of that.
Are we talking about that?
I'm being a bit blunt, but I just feel like there's an important thing that they're doing right now. And I get what Joe Biden is doing. He realizes that we've been cut out of the whole Middle East process for the last 4 years because of Donald Trump and his stupidity and his allegiance to Putin. We've let Russia basically rearrange the entire Middle East. They've basically taken over Syria. They've taken over all the oil supply in Syria and in Iraq. They are just acting like, along with Bibi, as conquerors of the whole region. And then with Jared's so-called peace plan, they're just reshaping everything in the image that they've desired. And now Joe Biden and the United States find themselves out of the process. Not only out of the process themselves, the Palestinians have been cut out of the process, and the Jordanians have been cut out of the process. Those are our allies. So, in fact, Biden did the only thing he could do under those circumstances to get us back in the game. There's no other way for us to be relevant if we're not in the game. We might as well just walk away and say, okay, Russia and Israel now control the Middle East, and we no longer have a stake here, and goodbye Palestinians. So the only thing he could do was jump in and try coordinate some sort of ceasefire so we stay relevant. And it's sad that this is what's come to. I mean, America 4 years ago, before Donald Trump, was a major superpower. Look what he has done in those 4 years, what he's done to America's standing in the world by withdrawing everything, by destroying all our alliances, by giving Putin a carte blanche to do whatever he wants to around the world, we've landed up like as a second-rate player to Russia in the Middle East. And we should never be there. It's Russia's maniacal and malicious and awful strategy that's over many, many years has gotten a lot of influence in Israel. But this is what's happened. This is the reality of where we are in the world. We are, we are building back, he says, we're building back better, but we are building back better from the very bottom. And that's not very good news, ultimately. I think he's the guy to do it. If you're going to ask anyone to build back better, that's the guy to do it. And I think the same thing's happening with the Nord Stream. We have nothing. All our infrastructure is booby rigged or booby trapped, so they can basically just cut things off whenever they want. We have nothing left in our firepower because of Donald Trump.
Okay.
And that man is still in Mar-a-Lago, just a free man. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, it drives us all nuts, right? And so, okay.
Sorry, I'll breathe.
And breathe.
You can try to explain that.
It is. I just always want to put this in there, right, for people so that they don't, as they listen, they're not going, right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to make everyone do that.
Yeah, it's okay. No. It's fine. You have to get it out. It's great.
Yeah.
And say it. It's important to say it. It's also important to remember what our capabilities are. We have extraordinary capabilities. We do. So yes, we have extraordinary capabilities to defend ourselves against these attacks where there can be focus and attention and priorities on that. Mm-hmm. We really do. We're gonna be okay there, guys.
Yeah.
If it's prioritized, America has incredible might, and our intelligence communities have incredible strength in the soft way, in how you want it, not in the crazy way. So I just
I think you're absolutely right.
I asked years ago. I was like, can't we just turn off Putin's lights? Can't we just go click? It's like, yeah, we can pretty much do that. So if that's not happening, it's because of all. I think giving you what you just said, I do believe there's so much repairing of relationships that has to happen right now. And also just getting the information flow going again with our
people
allies.
Trusting us.
They did not trust that last administration, and we need to catch up on this information. And frankly, the Secretary of State is really, really important to it. So to that process, and I really hope that this guy's up to the task. I really do.
He's a smart guy. Look, they did a lot in this.
Let me just wait. I was kind of excited at first, and now I'm like, So that's kind of what I'm watching. I'm watching it like that, but never question America's power. Well, really, truly, really.
I think it's important to say that we have been weakened by Donald Trump. I think that Americans need to hear, and especially Republicans need to see the mess that president left America and the world with. Because I don't think that's really registered yet. I think in some parts of MAGA country, they still think we're making America great. Let me tell you something. We did not make America great under Donald Trump. We weakened America a lot under Donald Trump. We'll build it back. It's still a very powerful country, but it's going to take all these moves, which people are like, huh? What, we're doing this? This is the way we're solving it? We're going to have to go in and build buildings for Hamas? I mean...
Right. I don't mean to talk over you. I'm sorry. That requires communication, which is what Greg and I have been yammering about. I feel like we've been shouting into the void, Oliar, of like, you have to talk. Stop this approach to the American people as if we're kind of children, and we need to know there is a way to communicate goals without disclosing strategy. There's a way to communicate corruption without compromising investigation or secrets. There's a way to do all of this, and we didn't have it for the last 4 years from any of our institutions because they were getting choked. They were choked by that last administration specifically to keep them from talking, which should have hopefully brought them to speak more, but they didn't. They got choked out. The first thing that needed to happen with this administration, and thank God they started it with the pandemic, that's great, but talk to us. Talk to us in a way that gets around the media's craziness, and their fascination with shiny objects and palace intrigue and clickbait. Just, I don't care. Take that podium every single day. State Department, just keep talking. And if it's that they are doing this and it's not getting to us, open up the channels, create new channels. Here's the live Periscope feed from the State Department. And every day it's going to come at you like this. Like, they need to that communication. Oh my God, it's so important. And
it's also the plain talking. It's the way they're talking. It's just they're talking in diplomatic speak, which is great for your diplomats and your everybody else. But American people don't know what you're saying because it's so like just a blur of words.
Now he did do it in the speech, the address.
Yeah.
It wasn't the State of the Union, but it was effectively the
Yes,
State.
he was very good.
He did it.
Right.
He did exactly what you're saying. Yeah. So they're capable of it. We just need more.
We need it
every day,
all the time.
Speak from every institution. Speak normally. Yeah.
Speak normally. Every institution. These are our goals. This is what we're about. So the American people know how to get behind you, and that ties back into what you were bringing up about Israel and the conflict right now there, which is just, for me, guys, I just feel like I have to wait till a lot happens to be able to look back and really have enough information to speak to that, which is why I haven't spoken to that. I haven't spoken to it on Twitter, and I am not going to speak to it on here other than to say that, we've said a lot about Bibi. I think anyone who's followed me is pretty clear about what I think about Bibi and any of Putin's thugs. But I need to, for me as an American, so that I can support my government and my government's position on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict ongoing, the stuff that it's just wearing everybody down. I mean, we're at the point where people are just now becoming exhausted with everything, right? And it's here in Los Angeles, we have a lot of violence happening in our citizenry. I can't even start talking about it because it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting. What's happening here, and it's being talked about a bit, not enough, but also you don't want to inflame it, right? You don't want to make it bigger than it is, but I'm sorry, it's significant enough. So there's a lot of hate crime going on in our nation around this conflict happening somewhere else, and so I want to be able to support our administration's position on this. But I find that that's impossible without understanding what Israel's position on it is. And not that I can't support it, I don't have enough information. And the only question I have that's not answered for me is, what is Israel's vision for the Palestinian people from the Israeli state? What do they see as the future for the Palestinian people? Beyond the conflict, yes, Hamas, terror organization, got it, all that, got all that, right? But then what?
I mean,
Bibi's been pretty much against a two-state solution. So if it's
Biden brought that back up this evening. He said
he brought it back up.
Two-state solution is all we can do. But
I want to hear from Israel. Let me finish this thought, because this is what I just can't. I'm just not here. I've never heard this. For the years I've been watching this, I've never heard a clear articulation, right, of what Israel's vision is for what happens for all of the Palestinian people. What do they see? Are they going to become part of Israel? That's off the books, right? Because they're not going to.
They see apartheid. That's what they see. That's what they see.
What do they see? Well, I need to hear them articulate it, and I don't find anybody asking them to articulate that. What is your vision for the future of the Palestinian people? if we can get past the present, which is connected to the past, and all this, and the violence stop, and the Hamas is gone, but what does Israel from that state, not even, what do they see as the future for the Palestinian people? And if I could hear that articulation, I'd have a much better grasp on how I feel about supporting what our administration, how they're supporting Israel. It's too hard without knowing that. For me, it's too hard without hearing that answer.
Can I actually, there's something really interesting. You just, as you were speaking there, reminded me of how apartheid really ended in South Africa. And it's very similar to what they're doing in Israel. Apartheid really ended in South Africa when they took a bunch of the up and coming union leaders and activists and people they thought they could be the business leaders in a future South Africa. And the rich business elite of South Africa took the not yet rich black elite of South Africa, and they had a secret meeting. I think it was Zambia or something, and they basically agreed to pay them. They basically agreed to buy them off. They said, "We're going to give you these companies. We're going to split up our massive steel corporation. You're going to get a piece of it, and you're going to run that steel corporation. We're going to split up the electricity power. You're going to get a piece of that." And then they promised them lots of money, and they promised them an ability to build better communities. That is really why apartheid ended relatively peacefully, because there was a monetary structure. Now, it's exactly the same thing that Jared Kushner is trying to do in Israel, except they didn't take them away, and they didn't agree. They didn't agree on what with the Palestinians, and they didn't agree with the Jordanians. They just said, okay, well, we agree with Saudi Arabia and we agree with UAE, but they never got an agreement from the people that had really counted, the Palestinians and the Jordanians. So they just went ahead because I don't know, maybe they ran out of time, whatever. So they were halfway through this experiment of, we're going to put together this new federation of countries in the Middle East, and they just are now trying to force it in or reverse engineer it in after this little war that they've had. Maybe that's the way in. Maybe it'll succeed. But ultimately, it is money. I think it is money that's working for them. Ultimately,
I don't know.
I had a thought about it, or an analogy, earlier as I was in the bath, because, as you know, I have thoughts. In the 50s and 60s, the United States policy towards Vietnam was uniformly, we must defend South Vietnam from communist incursion. We must. The domino effect is going to happen. We have to be there. We have to support this guy. That's what we must do. Democrats, Republicans, everyone at that time in the halls of power believed this to be true. Now, in hindsight, you look back and you think, what the fuck were they thinking? Like, really, you go back and you're trying to understand why they were all that way. And it was like they had this axiom, and the axiom was, must protect South Vietnam, without thinking it through. And I feel like there's a parallel there. Like, there's a lot of talk of, we have to protect democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. And yes, we do. But not all the citizens can vote. And didn't we vote to get rid? I honestly am asking because I don't know. I'm not an expert at this at all.
I'm confused too.
You can't have democracy in a Jewish state.
Why the fuck is that criminal still in charge? Yeah. And if he won't leave, and he's supposed to leave, if he's voted out and they're trying to indict him and he won't respond to the indictment, how the fuck is that a democracy? I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
I don't. Who is
the problem?
If you put Trump and Putin in a blender, you get Netanyahu. That's it. That's what it is. He is Trump and Putin combined.
They have a hotline to their homes. The two of them have a hotline. Bibi and Putin have a direct red phone hotline between their homes. No other leaders in the world do this. I've never heard of any other leaders. And they installed it in 2016, by the way. Not into his office, not into where he goes to work, into his home where it can be monitored. And it must be a very secure line. I'm sure the Russians put it in. So God knows what these two are conspiring on about. God knows. I mean, 20% of the Israeli population are Russians. Many of them are not even Jews; they're just Russians. But they're white, so they sort of qualify, I guess, in their world. And they, And that's a huge part of the population. They're in charge of the intelligence services. They have all these oligarchs that are Russians and Israelis, like Vexelberg and these guys, and they're these people are living in Israel most of the time, pouring in billions of dollars into an economy that never used to have it. So that changes the dynamic of power a lot, and it's almost like Israel's become like a little Putin colony, really, like a little Putin, area of influence now. So he controls Syria and he controls Israel. That's what it feels like to me. Otherwise, how do you explain Bibi still being there? I don't. After losing 4 elections,
it's baffling to me. And I think 50 years from now, people are going to look back on this period the way that we look back on the South Vietnam thing. That's all I'm saying.
I think
people are not going to be able to understand it. It's not going to make sense.
Yeah. I think here's the thing. I think we can now, and I do want to say this because my sister-in-law is Israeli, right? And so,
I'm
and
Israeli,
so many
so.
of my friends, and you're Israeli.
Trust me, I feel this.
I think, you feel it. I think now I do think Americans, and I think we can connect with the Israeli people, hopefully in a broader way in terms of having a corrupt leader. Mm-hmm. And having that get collapsed with you, right? Mm-hmm. So collapsing Bibi with Israel is a real problem, and because they can't seem to get rid of him, and they are trying. Israeli
people. Oh my God, the media is great there. The media knows. Haaretz, if you read the papers, they all hate him. They know.
And he keeps losing. He still was there.
He keeps losing. So that's a real big distinction to make, and I think it's important to understand that part of the cementing of Bibi is Israel. So when about Bibi, that was, I remember very specifically John Boehner, as Speaker of the House, going around Barack Obama and inviting Bibi Netanyahu to come and address Congress. And this whole push on the Republican Party to be pro-Bibi and to collapse pro-Bibi with being supportive of Israel to the degree that you can have now. This is that party. This is our party. How our American, one of our 2 parties in America has messed this up as well. And we have to take responsibility of that, of what we have done in this scenario as Americans with one of our parties has really made it more difficult and challenging. You have someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who you guys have hardly ever hear me say her name because I don't amplify these people. But for her to come out and do the stuff she's doing, her LARPing now around, her role play around being pro-Israeli, when she's Miss Insurrectionist who were showing up with the Auschwitz, T-shirts. So and all of the 3 percenters and all these people that are her people that are all about there weren't anti-Semitism on a level of disgustingness that should be repulse every sentient being on the planet, and they're collapsing it now, right? They're playing the role just like they, of this, we have our Nazis and we are Nazis, but we're pro-Bibi, and if you're not for Bibi or if you're against Israel right now, then and just confusing everything. It's just a blender of disinformation and lies and horseshit, excuse my word, as that we've just not seen. I just don't ever remember anything this craven ever. We've
never had parties split allegiances like this.
It's so bad. So America is messing around in this too with our citizenry and our elected officials from one of our parties, and we got to clean up our own house, everybody. Right?
Evangelicals.
Stop. And the evangelicals all got, they got hijacked. Their praise got hijacked.
They admitted it. They're like, we have more. Yeah. Our support in the United States, Israel says, is from the evangelicals, not from the American Jews. So that's what it all stems from. This idea, and the evangelicals think that when Israel rules itself, that within however many generations, the rapture will come. That's the fucking. That's
they're working towards it. Yeah,
that we're dealing with here.
It's
really bad shit.
Yeah.
You know what it really comes down to, and this will not surprise anybody, but it actually comes down to one thing. It comes down to, let me put it up here, oil. oil, oil, oil. There's a Nord Stream thing. Remember we showed you that earlier on. So Israel lately has become quite a center for oil distribution. Now you can't really see it that clearly on this map, but you see the green dot down here in the bottom part of this thing? That's Israel. Israel just announced recently as part of their...
You mean where Israel is?
Sorry? I'm just saying it's a green dot.
On the map? Okay.
It is a difficult map because of the coloring. I'm having to
I did this myself today, so it probably is a little off. But I will say that let me put it on the big screen. It's a little easier for people to see that way. Okay. But the deal that the UAE and Israel signed basically is to build a pipeline from the UAE, which is the bottom right over here, to Israel, which means they'll no longer need to take their oil reserves all the way around the bottom part of the Saudi Arabian peninsula over there and up through the Suez Canal. They could just ship it directly by pipeline to Israel. And then from Israel, it'll go to Europe. And this is not the first time it's actually happened. In the past, there's been a secret pipeline between the Iranians and the Israelis. So for many years, because of Mark Rich, wasn't it Mark Rich who came up with these deals, that the Iranians were secretly selling their oil, shipping it to Israel, and being sold through that pipeline that they have in the northern part the southern part of Iran over there. I'm trying to find this picture again. I just have to show you the conclusion of this whole thing that I think is why we're having this huge problem. So now they're building, so that you see the one that's going into Iran. The Iranis are the green. They've got now one going to the UAE, and they are beginning to build this pipeline to Europe now that will go to Cyprus and Greece that will be able to provide oil to all of Europe, just like the Nord Stream provides the gas. And the thing that everyone can now see, because Russia has Syria, basically, controls Syria, there's a way for Russia to control an entire pipeline of oil that goes all the way through Azerbaijan, where there's recently been another conflict with Armenia and Georgia, and then that connects directly into Turkey and into Syria, and bam, they've got the entire oil pipeline from the Saudis and the UAEs connected to Russia in going through Israel. That is what is all at stake here, is this giant oil deal that would make Russia the monolith of oil in the world, and allied with our allies, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and Israel suddenly becoming an oil nation, which I don't know how that ever happened. I think that's what this is about. That's what this is really.
That looks like we should, where those pipelines are, looks to me like we should establish Kurdistan, and that can operate like Delaware operates when you're trying to drive down I-95. And like you're fine, and then you get to Delaware, and there's like 17 toll bridges on the 12 miles that I-95 is there.
I mean, I don't know. I don't even been to Delaware actually, but I'm glad they had Joe Biden there.
Oh, you're missing out. Because you're not friends with Brett Kavanaugh and were in the room when he
I was not in that room.
Horrible thing that he did in high school, and you had to hide from the media and the Congress.
Pretty guarantee I was not in that room for sure. Anyhow. So I'm going to stop talking about Israel. I'm going to stop talking about Russia.
Mark Judge was hiding in Delaware. That's right. My joke is
we can start talking about. I think the, for me, it's just, I would love for people to stop harming one another.
Yes,
that would be nice.
When I ran into Mark Rich's name when I was looking at this today, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like just unbelievable when you find all these names that I didn't know that Mark Rich did all these. He was like the oil king back then. He did all these dirty oil deals for selling oil for anybody you wanted to get your oil.
That Mark Rich pardon sent me into the stratosphere.
Yeah, seriously, I'm sure. I don't really know very much about him. I just know that Clinton gave him a huge pardon out of nowhere.
My main thing that I know about Mark Rich is when I worked at AP, and the incoming journalists used to have to take a news writing test, and one of the questions and stories that they were to construct was about Mark Rich getting the pardon.
Oh, okay, there you go.
There you go. Little known fact.
Something came up about AP. I can't remember what it was. Something came up. So we got a bunch of
because they blew up the fucking building, and now AP is accused of being working for the bad guys. They're working for Hamas. AP is a not-for-profit cooperative owned by every daily newspaper in the New York, in the entire United fucking States. It is not working for Hamas. That's batshit insanity. That's it.
I've got other things to bring up, but I think you should take a break. And on the other side of the break, I don't know what we're going to talk about at the other side of the break. I got some charts I can show you, but I don't know. We'll think about it. So we'll be right back on the after show. You can also tell us what you want to talk. We can talk about if you want to show us, tell us in the chat rooms.
I'll look in the comments. Yeah, there's some great comments been going on.
Comments have been great tonight, guys. Comments have been wonderful.
Because otherwise, you're going to get a thesis in all of world history. We'll be right back, everybody. Tonight's show is brought to you by Helix Sleep, and they have a special offer for Narrative viewers. I've heard it from so many people. The one thing that's changed since January is their sleep. Not waking up worrying about what the president might have done or said or tweeted makes the world of a difference. I don't think I had a good solid night's sleep in 4 years. And it wasn't only the president. My 10-year-old mattress, which started life as a 12-inch foam mattress, had shrunk to an 8-inch mattress, and getting out of bed was often more of a slide than a bounce. It was time for a new mattress. Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? Changing the course of a country can take a village. Changing the course of your sleep takes a quiz. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/narrative. That's the way we spell narrative, N-A-R-A-T-I-V. That's helixsleep.com/narrative for up to $200 off and 2 free pillows just for you. Did you like that line, Greg?
I like the whole thing.
About taking a village.
It was making me tired. I was enjoying the Helix Sleep here.
They're very, very nice mattresses. They're very comfy. And you take the quiz. Anytime you want to take the quiz, they're easy to do. They'll tell you exactly what kind of bed you need. Apparently, I've got a funny picture to show you of.
Let's see it.
It's not that funny, but it's decent enough. It'll distract you. Yeah, this is.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. There you are. Now you can hear me. But you've guessed who this is by now, right? Presumably.
No.
You don't know who this is?
No.
You can't tell.
That's Charles.
It's Charles. Look at him.
Oh, I thought it was Boris Johnson.
It was Charles. It was Charles pre-meeting Diana. Things were looking okay back then. Well, they looked a little.
Oh my God, those ears!
The ears
money, they can't fix that? Okay.
Yeah. So anyhow, now there's like an ongoing battle between his son and his court about whether he's a good father or not. Have you guys been following this? Have you seen Harry's new special with Oprah, where he talks about being bullied and that let me put this up properly. Hang on a second. So Harry's gone on a full-on offensive about Charles being a terrible parent and saying he's a bully, and I'll find you the quotes if you want in a second here, but they're, it's not the typical thing for the royal family to go out and say bad things about the future king just when he's about to become that. And then they've got this other thing with Princess Diana, the interview she did with Martin Bashir, where she was sort of
thing.
Yeah. So this whole airing out of whether these two are good parents or were good parents to their kids, one of whom has had some issues with mental health and drugs and alcohol, and is recovered and rehabilitated. But there's a lot going on there that's kind of fascinating, that we're being given this purview into their lives. And it's important to some people because I think it's saying to some people, should this guy be king? Should this guy really be the future king of England?
I think that we should not have a future king of England. I think they should abolish the monarchy and they should all fuck off. How about that?
I mean,
Yes.
do you really think that? I mean, do you really think it's time to abolish monarchies? I worry about that, but maybe.
Yeah, fuck them.
Yeah.
Why should this idiot get? I don't understand. I don't understand. It's 2021 here. I mean, I was thinking about it. Even calling people. I was listening to a podcast interview where someone was referencing Prince Michael, and it's like, why do we call these people Prince this and Queen that? It's fucking stupid. Just call them their name.
We can call
His
him
name is
Tsar the
Charles,
Terrible.
not the Saxa Teutonic guy. whatever the hell it is.
Maybe we should call him
Windsor, I suppose.
Charles the Terrible or something. Maybe he needs a more aggressive name or something, because it doesn't
No,
look like he's going.
no.
He's not going. Doesn't look like he's going to roll over Russia over there in that stance. But I don't know. I'm judging the way he's standing.
I do so enjoy your visceral reaction to Charles. You're just like, no, when it comes to him.
I'm not a fan of him. No, I'm not. I think he's.
Not. It's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
I do think it matters that he bullied his kids and that he wanted them to be unhappy, and he didn't try and make them happy. And then probably, who knows how she died and why she died, and like it's not been
Well, let's do this. They were very clear. Both boys of Diana's and Charles were very clear about how their mom died. Their mom died because of the press. That's what this whole big thing is. This pushback on the BBC. It's pretty epic over there. I've been kind of keeping an eye. I'm like, BBC's getting dragged, and there's a lot of problems within the BBC. And let's also remember
Jimmy Savile.
And let's also remember that the BBC also just aired Storyville, the documentary on Jersey and the Queen's wallet that is Jersey. Now, I call
next week on my podcast, by the way. That's that.
Oh, fantastic. I call it the Queen's wallet. I would like to see, which I have not seen. I've seen the offshores there. I'm sure I'm just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the kind of money that has been pushed through Jersey for a very long time. But it did explode in volume when this man's younger brother, Andrew, was when he was in charge of he was like the trade minister. He was the trade minister, whatever he was, whatever weird title they gave him from 99 or 2001.
He was the trade commissioner, I think, or something like that. Yeah,
that's right. And he was swinging in with the Kazakh families and all the different kind of oligarchies, right, which are like monarchies, and their vast sums of wealth in these very shady places. And that money was getting brought in volume. It's always been going through Jersey because it's an offshore haven.
Convenient when it's your own territory and your own bank. It's very nice.
It's also a crown dependency, which is very different. It's not part of the United Kingdom. It actually belongs to the monarchy. And so, but what we don't know is there a cut of the money that comes into Jersey that goes up to the monarchy in any kind of significant way? Don't know. I think that's worthy of an investigation.
Well, he gets.
So
they all get knighted. All the Jersey politicians do all the shit, and then they get knighted. Why did they get knighted? They get knighted.
Why did they get knighted?
Fuck a duck. By the way, just briefly here, why are we even after Brexit and Scotland leaves and Northern Ireland leaves? Who gives a shit who's king of this one little place?
Because he's not. He's king of all these other places. He's got 12 realms or something.
How big is Great Britain? Really?
Well, it's not
that big. Was it as big as we care about the king of Indiana or something?
He'll still be the king of Scotland. Scotland will just be a separate country. So the way he gets his money is really interesting. They've sort of created this whole area called the Duchy of Cornwall, where he gets. He basically runs it like its own feudal area. You can't really build your own home. You can't really own your own home unless he says so. You can't have anything he doesn't approve. You can't have your own animals if he doesn't approve of that. He runs it like a little, just as a little area, and he basically takes a percentage of everything that the duchy makes. They send it to him. And last year, I think it was $20 million or something like that. Maybe it wasn't that much. $4 million.
That sounds like something else.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Sounds mobby to me. Sounds like a mobster to me.
It sounds very mobby. It sounds mobby, and it sounds like the Dark Ages. It sounds like a feudal. Now, I don't have a territory. I don't know if you guys have a territory.
Here we go.
That subsidizes you for. Oh, did they cut my audio? Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It all went weird again. The gremlins are back.
They don't love me over there.
Well, listen. All I can think about is Monty Python. I can't not think about Monty Python when I see these people. And it's right there. Yeah, it's like, so it's a clown show. Again, I'm very American. My family has been here forever and ever and ever. And the ones that came later, just prior to the last century, are Irish.
Well, then
100%.
they're also part of
So
her world.
to me and my family and my people, these are clowns.
Yeah, but you also had the same queen, right? Doesn't the queen also look after Ireland? She does. It's one of her territories. That was only a couple of hundred years ago.
Look after is a euphemism.
We're not fans.
I mean, the thing that are just people. It's so recent that we've had people like the Tsar, running to Russia and declare himself Ivan the Terrible. And when was that? 300 years ago? 400 years ago?
Ivan the Terrible died in 1590.
And then when the last Tsar was what, in the 1900s?
The last Tsar abdicated in 1917 and was executed in late June of 1918.
This is not a long time ago. These people who are now sitting there. They used to rule the world with like armies and wars and like they do in fairy tales. I mean, it's not this. It's only a century ago that we got rid of a lot of these people, and they still are.
Yeah, and it's only 30 years ago that we had the internet, but we're not going back. So I'm going to maintain my fuck these guys position.
Yeah, the thing and the reason I just don't like him because he gets along with Donald Trump. I mean, it's just.
I understand, but we're Americans, guys. We threw these people off first, and we did it well, and we created the greatest democracy the world has ever known. We're the first, not the first, but one of the first. Okay. So I don't entertain this at all. I'm sorry.
I don't entertain it either, and I think America's got to be really careful of us becoming the idea of autocracy. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about these people. They're talking about more people with power and wealth, and whether it's the oligarchs from Russia or our own oligarchs like Donald Trump who wants to be that. This is what they're talking about. These kind of loony people taking over our lives and telling us whether we can own our homes or build our animal plots in our backyard or not. I mean, this is not. They want us to be their subjects again. They're not into this democracy thing very much. This is what we're talking about. Nice. I think.
And I want a pony, but it ain't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen.
I don't care what Charles wants.
I know. Go fuck off. So I think we just got to remember that there's something worth fighting for here.
But let's come back to the idea of the BBC a little bit. I'm very intrigued. I'm intrigued because it's very clear that whatever that was he did, Martin Bashir's.
That's terrible journalism.
Wow. Wow, is that horrible? Oh
it's
my
the worst.
God.
Fabricated documents to entrap her? Wow.
Oh my
Just
God.
Bad.
So just the worst. What are they going to do about it? I don't know. How do we look then at that news organization and other news organizations? There was something in the New Republic that came out recently. I'm kind of figuring out how I feel about it. And there's a new book out by Barry Meyer coming. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about that too, because there's interesting positions. But there's an underlying thread between those two things, which is, journalism has been swimming with, and these outlets have been swimming with, and the journalists themselves, these private intelligence companies. Mm-hmm. And some of them aren't so private. If you really dig deep into it, they're still very much connected to the state. And so what do we do about intelligence, global intelligence, right? Agenda-driven intelligence as well, constantly doing this heat-seeking missile with the press and journalists going along with it, right? And using it and trust-washing stuff that might be highly weaponized, as if it's not.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to be a journalist these days. It's not.
It's very difficult. So I feel like we're getting a peek underneath some of these, some of these things, and I'm interested. While at the same time learning, again, another thing in that's surfacing is just in this field. I'm not saying any of this is connected. I'm just like in the topic area. Is that what's her name? Barbara. What's her last name? From CNN that the Trump administration had.
Oh my gosh.
Starr? No.
Barbara Starr. Starr, correct. Barbara Starr.
Okay.
She's the Pentagon correspondent for CNN. I cannot believe she's the most trustworthy person in the entire world. For them to be eavesdropping and getting her phone records is insane. It's insane.
It's insane. So what was the underlying? You got to have. Oh boy, you got to.
The underlying thing is Russia wanted to know what they were saying.
So did she not know she was speaking to somebody? Did Bill Barr do something that corrupt?
It's so corrupt, and they've done it before. They once, I think, the wiretapped the entire AP once, or they want they've done it before.
Look,
if they want to follow phone records, they don't listen in, but it's often not exactly for friendly purposes. It's for political purposes, and it's not for criminal
I don't know
purposes.
about that. I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. For the Trump corruption, I think we have to look at that specifically. But I'm sorry, we had journalists carrying the water for one of the greatest acts of espionage ever committed against our intelligence community with Snowden for years.
Mm-hmm.
For years they carried that shit and called it whistleblowing and allowed all that crap framing around all that, while our heads of intelligence were coming out and saying, oh my God, this is espionage. What are you doing? And, we've talked about this a lot. And people just were swept away.
Both together in lockstep.
Swept away with the propaganda around it, with how it had been.
It's such a good point.
Americans are not very. And this came up in Greg's podcast today too. God, I got to listen to that podcast again.
It's
good. Was so good.
Yeah,
that interview.
It was a good one today.
He was talking about because Rudd was amazing. His clarity and how he just was rapid fire. It was like every single thing coming out of him. You're like, I need an hour to study.
But later,
He talked about that, but he also talked about what our enemies have done, how they've been able to turn us against ourselves, is to weaponize the things that actually make us the strongest. Things like weaponizing our free press or weaponizing the First Amendment. This is how we have been being attacked, and we don't have a response for it. We don't know what to do when you take some of our biggest strengths that make us this great nation, this great democracy, and turn it on us, right? And hurt us with it. So I'm not saying that this is what's going on with CNN and with Barbara Starr. I think Bill Barr is a highly corrupt individual. I always have. I'm just saying there's a nuance in this whole world that we're getting in here with what are we supposed to do with journalism now? That and it always has been. And he got into Durante on the
it was interesting.
And he got into the Holdemar. It's always been this sort of if you can take over the territory of people's minds, you don't need to go and take over their territory, their land territory. You don't need to do that. Just take over their mind. I was just
thinking it's a great line.
It's a great line. The way you take over people's minds is through media, is through news. It's also through academia, and it's through what comes out of there as sort of like papers or research. Or if you can corrupt that, then that. Why? Because the media will carry that water as if, okay, here's what Harvard just said, right?
This is what they're so good at. This is what the Russians in particular are so good at this.
Knowledge and information. They're so good at it. And we gotta wake up.
We gotta learn. We gotta learn quickly.
And learn. Yeah, we gotta wake up and learn.
But what he says on the podcast, and you're right. All this is, I agree with everything that you said, because the stuff that he said on the podcast. But we have failed. The United States has failed to assess what we can do and what we're supposed to do. I mean, we're talking about Blinken before. He doesn't seem to understand Russia, but neither did any of his predecessors. It's all the same shit. Maybe Hillary did. The Condi didn't, going back decades. None of these people get the fucking Ukraine thing. What Victor says that we must do with Putin is the same goddamn thing he does to us. The difference is the problems in Russia that we should be highlighting are manifest. They're everywhere. They're manifold. They're everywhere. Okay? What percentage of the country doesn't have toilets that work? What percentage are alcoholics?
The economy's it's tanking.
The oligarchs steal money, like lots and lots of money. It's a corrupt society. They're starving Navalny in the prison. There's all these things that are actually happening that are awful. Also, by the way, the Russian Federation is the remains of the Soviet Union, which was an empire that conquered other lands, and the Russian Federation includes parts of it that are other lands that would like to be independent. That's also something we should be goddamn highlighting. We used to be good at this.
Yep.
Come on, CIA. Prevent revolution,
well, you know who's
for
really
Christ's
good at
sake.
it? The guy who was kind of leading the charge on that, at the tip of the spear of all that. Of, I'm going to show you the content. I'm going to show you the homes. I'm going to send some drones over these mansions, and bringing that into social media, and was Navalny, and that is why he got poisoned, and that is why.
And also, and before Navalny, Firestone, who was on Prevail 2 weeks ago, did the series of YouTube clips about Magnitsky and the money that was stolen, taken out of the treasury by Putin's goons. And those YouTube videos were very influential in Russia and started it. This is the shit we need to do. This doesn't cost anything.
No one does anything about this, and this is an interesting part of their strategy. And it's a bit like heady, but I'll still I ran through some of this last Tuesday on the show. So this comes from the Estonian spy services. They put out this thing about how to tackle Russia, and one of the things that they highlight here is look at all these red dots or these red areas here. These are all occupied territories of Russia. So Russia's basically gone into Ukraine and occupied some territory. They've gone into Georgia and they've occupied some territory. They've gone into Armenia. They've occupied some territory. It's all over the place. Yeah. So they just do this, and it's part of their strategy called controlled instability. And this is the way they do it. One of the things they do is they limited development of the rule of law, a lot of absence of free elections, repressed society, limited relations with the West, and then the territorial conflict is a big deal. This is one of the ways they get in there, and they sort of start screwing with people's minds because they basically invade a portion of the country, and suddenly you're in a state of war and panic. And it's so interesting to me because it's exactly why I think, he ended the show this morning and he talked about Alaska. And in fact, this was the week that Lavrov made some hints about Alaska and, that it is Russian territory. And his prediction, your guest today, the prediction was that by the end of this year, there'll be some territorial disputing over Alaska. And why are they doing that? They're doing it for controlled instability. It is not because they necessarily want it, or I'm sure they do, but it's to screw with us. It's to mess with us. It's to mess with our minds. Right. We know it's coming. You can see it a mile away. Your guest is absolutely right. You heard Lavrov say it the other day. Alaska is going to be a point of dispute. Are we ready for it? Are we ready to take that battle? Are we ready to do the same thing to them? I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we are. We are. I think the American people are. We have to sort of raise our voices. Look, just to come all the way back to where we started when you asked me about what I listened to. Even that great character Lebowski, my spirit character, right? Knew the bottom line, and that was this aggression will not stand, man. Like you gotta stand up. It will not stand. Now, and they figured out how to fight back against the some of it, right? Donnie had a heart attack and ended up ashes and sprayed all over everybody's face. But in the end, it was also, the rug tied the room together, and that's also the bottom point. But so democracy is tying this room together. We have to stand up and fight against the people who are aggressing us with this. Everybody needs to chill out, right? Yeah. While doing that, we got to Lebowski ourselves out. But at the end of you want to be the dude at the bar at the end with the cowboy telling you fucking did it, dude, right? Like you're the man. And I do think we could figure it out. If enough of the American people continue to figure it out and continue to raise our voices, and honestly, all of this stuff is tied together to 2022, 2024, the parts of our democracy that are our strongest and that do work, we need to lean into them. Sheryl Sandberg, thank you for that phrase, you crazy lady. Mm-hmm. And make it work for us. Put our strength behind our own democracy and make it continue to work with us. We've got to get these horrible people out. We've got to get new people in, and we have to make it clear, like I thought we were clear with Joe and Kamala. When we put you in there, do something about our enemy who's been attacking us. Yeah. And do something about the criminal that occupied that White House for 4 years, who's just lounging down in Mar-a-Lago. So we just need to be a little louder and need to make everybody know. Yeah, we expected this. We expected you to follow through on the reasons why we put you in there, which was stabilizing ourselves in the world and getting that criminal and getting all his cronies and getting them on their crimes.
We now expect you to do something about Alaska. This is coming. Alaska's coming.
Right.
Look at what Russia's done. They've put all these forces up, 300 miles away. There's a base on this island for no good reason with all this expensive radar. That's craziness that they're building up. This is not just them setting up shop for, picnics. They're setting up shop to attack Alaska. We know it's coming. What are we doing about it? Can we get into place and do something? I hope we are. Okay, that's we sort of covered everything somehow today. I don't know how.
We didn't have our White Russian drink. Right?
Yes.
So really know
we're gonna have a Caucasian.
Full Lebowski. We're gonna have it.
Have a Caucasian.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to watch that now.
Better. Well, that's the show. What was your line again? That's the best line ever, LB.
Which one?
The one you just used. It was so good. Everybody's got something. This aggression will not stand. I love it. You guys have a great weekend. You're not going to stand. We're not going to do it. No. Have a good weekend, guys. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, Ev. Thanks, everybody.
I'll leave you some Sheryl Crow.
There we go.
Oh, there it is.
See, Cheryl knows.
She's got it.
Where is it?
She chilled out. We need to chill and stop the aggression.
All I want to do is have some fun before I die. You're the old man sitting next to me at the restaurant. I think we need a dramatic reading of the lyrics.
Got me laughing so hard I went all the way back.
I can't hear what you guys are saying, but okay.
Don't worry about it. No, it's bad. It's bad. It's the tequila. Good night.
Good night. Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.